There we go. So it's nice to be told you look good. Feels good too, though. So the next phase of this, as we go from, it's not easy to talk about this. I know that. I concur. It's not easy to be it either. So when we go into force 10, so once again, go by just the outline right now and the pictures that come up. That's the only orientation to what I'm talking about other than what I'm saying, which doesn't always make a lot of sense, but maybe with the flow of that, maybe it'll make a little bit more sense. So as you get into, well, can you ever measure frequency? Can you measure the force of frequency? Not the frequencies, not can you raise frequencies or transmit on different frequencies. No, this is force frequency, force charge, which has to have the ever momentum of the cosmos within it, otherwise it wouldn't be ever charged. So the force of 10, when I say that force 10, that just means that in what I'm experiencing out of this momentum of, we'll get into angular momentum, but that it's all there. It's all there. They talk about it in the physics. It's all there. But within that organism of how things exist within the quatro force of all that is, and we're a part of that, that the equation of that force is not that's why I kind of said the pyramid thing. It doesn't really, and I kind of know what they were pointing at there, but it wasn't really, it's not the qualification of the force of frequency. That is something else. So let's go into that just a tad. So the force of 10 would always come from whatever ends up. As we said, that's the end of the way, the laying down of the nine. So this is kind of where all this came from, as far as from the drawings that started, and I'll try and put this in there. Before that, they looked a certain way. In fact, I'll show you one, the dude with the staff, and then we'll compare it with this other one that I just drew just a little while ago. It's an interesting comparison. But at one point, there was that recognition of actually putting some attention. I think my intellect was actually putting some attention on, well, how would you equate to the force of the frequency? Just from the other, once again, everything from this far is like equating, our value point up has always been just how we feel, how good we're doing, some sort of expression within consciousness, and I just expressed that can't be the only evaluating point that we have for our intellect in time and space at any given time, whatever you want to evaluate time to be. Just don't. And then you'll get a little bit more of what I'm talking about. So the force of 10 came from my mind actually having to go through that, because every intellect that seeks what the fuck's going on is going to go through all of this. It cannot go through the mesh of the density of consciousness because it's connected to it. Always. That's why this is not, any conversation is never a one-way street. It's always connected. Because I have no expectation. So the force power 10 is a gradient force of what's happening. Actually came out of placing my hand on the paper. But anyway, so everything from that point on, the photographs, the things that you see are all contained within something that we can acclimate ourselves to in the mind, in the context, and I'll start on the board here in a second, but the context of, experience. And what we contexted ourselves to, this is what I was going to try and get at here in this moment, which is it's happening, it's what we kind of acclimate to, is what's possible and all it is. It's kind of what I've kind of, it's a word that keeps coming. It's like if we're talking about point charge in a current of existing that actually is more this way than it's not more. It's just it has a force power this way that means as much as we do this way. So that gradient of this, that's what we're talking about. How it's always been kind of like, well, I don't know, and so let's just give it up. I don't give it up to who. It's not a matter. That's the point. The point that what's beyond that is not what I'm talking about. You can believe beyond whatever the force power gradient of all these force powers is. It's not. You could. I am. There's no containment to the power of belief of an intellect. That's not what this is about. So when you feel into the force of an existing DNA unit, you're just feeling into the force of that organ and that organism. It lives and dies as a force power unit, just like everything else. That's all we're talking about. It's just that the human has a 2-to-1 interface with frequency exchange and nothing else does. So we are unique in whatever creation comes out of that interface. So the force power of 10 has reason. That's kind of where reason comes from. We can reason, and other intellects on this earth can't to this level. So that has a electrostatic component and electromagnetic component. The one that is imaginary and wants all the pie in the sky, and the one that says this is what the fucking deal is. You're on Earth right now, and that's just the reality of the moment. And is it going to change? Does it? You can't ask the question. That's not a question. It's just what's happening. Anything beyond that's going to bring anxiety because anything could be anything unless you know what you are within any story that you would interact with. Because the storyline has become bigger than the reality line. Basically, what it comes down to the thinking mind. It's off on interacting with a storyline before it's knowing what's behind it all. Because that takes a lot of attention to do that, and then, well, this is what's happening right next door to me, or in society. To be reverent to all that takes a lot of attention. And most of the time, our attention, because of the DNA glitch, it doesn't rise to that occasion very often. And when it does, it takes a lot of attention. So it's a gradient of attention. That's what I said in my last one. It's a gradient of force power attention. That's what a raise of frequency is. So the force power of 10 is that the attention can do that. And it is existing, and it's always existing for the cosmos. It's always existing for us. It's just, I'm not going to get into it now, but it's what we're going to do with that force power 10, which equates back into what we do with production. So, and I'm not going to get a lot into technology. I was going to talk more about FPV. I'm just going to start production here pretty soon, so I'm not going to throw a lot of that out. Maybe here in a minute. But I want to get on to this last little bit, and then I'll draw some of this out. So the concurrency of time, before I get into SpaceX 11, the concurrency of time is what I was trying to get to. Current. The words have always had an interplay with our experience. At this point in time in consciousness, there's always been an interplay to meaning through words. And then you get down to the deeper, it's like you notice the tonality of the words. Notice the utterance of the word. You know what time of day it came out, at what position on the earth it occurred, word, utterance. What matters is that there's a resonance of something that transmits frequency that is, it just doesn't seem to want to be judged. It doesn't want the mind to be there. And the first thing that comes to my mind is always the layer, the lyrical part of the being, which always comes out in some sort of voice. So the spoken word is there. That's why I'm doing this. It's easier for me to do this than anything. So this is what I'm doing right now. Then it will be production. So the conveyance is always there. It's there. It's relevant. But it can't be the only relevance. It's just something. And so music is something. It's definitely been you for the music. Because the rhythm, which is what I want to try and get into here, the concurrency of time. So there's charge, which is your 3. Currency being the economy of life, which would be the production. Context of that is what we're really ish. Nothing happens because of the context, and it's what comes out within experience. It's the experiencing, it's the contexting. It's what comes out within the fractal moment. Because we're not what we think we are as a physiology. We are as so if they talk about the atom being something that, the first guy, he said he thought he was walking on air because he found out everything was atoms, and it's not particular like that. It's light oriented. Otherwise, we couldn't. We're not. None of it would make sense. I don't relate to matter in that way. As a sentient organism, I relate to matter in the context of what I've been presenting and how everything works through water, angular momentum of the universe, and light, which is the solar. Heat, more cold, but the burn. So if attention is more on what it's feeling, then it's more attentive to the actual burn, which goes back to the south. That has nothing to do with what you can do with quantum mechanics in the moment. That has to do with the quatro force of all that is in the moment. And the mechanics of that are different. And there isn't an abyss. So it's horsepower 10, it's not the abyss that's happening at that point, it's that you don't have enough recognition of space, which I call space X11. You don't have enough recognition of what point B is to have enough empowerment of 10 to, so that's anxiety. That's basically anxiety, and that's a DNA frequency. It's all one thing. It's not that I know something here and that's something else, and fuck you, and no. This is all one thing that's happening all at the same time. So to understand, I think that's maybe the reason why chirality is such an issue within the understanding of the mind. Because it just really doesn't want to, that there's no way that could be just as important as this. Because we think of the ground as death, and it's not, it's life. So, and then I want to get into air right now. There's a lot to do with the 3 components of all that is in this universe, and that's ground and the water and the air. That interaction. That's under the dome. And then we're a part of that. But our intellect is a 2 to 1. And that driving intellect to the DNA is something that doesn't happen through any other organism on this earth. And it doesn't happen as Earth. Earth is not more important than we are or something different. It's of the same frequency, but it's not human. So all the math or any equations that would come out of any of this, because I'm just in the development stage, would be oriented towards, well, let's maybe get ourselves out there and find out what really is going on within our universal oracle, what we can feel too. That's all. So if some people have felt to it, some people have equated to it, that means it can be done. And what else can be done in that? That's all. So I'm excited about that. So let me get, do we have time? We'll just do a little bit. So to kind of bring this back all in, I think I was getting at, oh, so I was going to show point charge from a different point, different point of view, sort of thing. So I'll draw it again in the same place. This time I'll draw it from the nebula. I don't know if I was. So you think here of the difference between a square and not the square. And I'm going to give this a little bit of motive towards that way. Give a little motion. I'm just starting to draw what would be happening on, so said, planetary nebula coming in. This is basically force charge of, not force charge, that's mass. So, the X, that's not a square. I've been looking down at that. Hi. That's not a square. So point charge is always having to release, of course. And so the corners that we exist in as the way we've been thinking have been because of however we're viewing ourselves within time and space, however you want to look at that. But once you start to allow, that's why you can't have a lockdown. So all I'm saying is we built and we produced exactly how it doesn't work. Why did that happen? Only because we got stuck in a frequency of energy. Or it's just frequency. Right now it's just E equals MC squared. That's where we're at with it. But it's always been just well, that's as far as I want to go. And that sends frequency going down like a mofo. So the reality of experience ends up being not enough depth of field. And that's why it's so shallow. So that's how frequency works. That's just how it works. So thought has been doing this with the frequency. That's what it's been doing. Or the intellectual component of frequency. Which is all that really matters in the moment, is what you're doing with it. Where your attention is at. Keeping it on this is really hard right now. So angular momentum comes from this occurrence. So it's always happened. They have to write it into the equation. All we're really after is this compression deal here. That's what we're really trying to equate ourselves to. And it's just a whole different math. So the concurrency of time is the contexting of what experience actually is going to be based upon what's point B. What is meaning to point A? Why is point A here? You don't have to ask the question. It's just, you don't know what it is, feel more. It's not feel more pain. It's not conflict. It's not, you don't confront pain with pain. Got enough pain. Attention creates resonance. Resonance creates constructive things going on in the body. That's different. If it produces more pain, it produces more pain. And we're going to take off here in a minute, but I did want to show just a little bit of the concurrency of time is the context of the charge that's in the time existing. And that's not something that's measured by time, it's something that's measured by charge. That's all I wanted to say.